There we go. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Brittany Branyon, and I serve as Director of Carey Center Collegiate and Community Programs to include the Nonprofit Affiliate Program, currently serving over 125 nonprofits in East Alabama and beyond. Welcome to a program I have truly been looking forward to all summer, donor-centered virtual events. Before we begin, I would like to share a little more about the Nonprofit Affiliate Program. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I definitely see more faces on this call than before. So sorry for those who have heard this spiel a million times, but I just want to make sure everyone knows about us. The Carey Center Nonprofit Affiliate Program fosters a community of educators, professionals, organizations, and students who have a desire to embody philanthropy, nonprofit studies, and leadership in their professional and personal lives. We provide professional development and networking opportunities to members to include Mix and Mingles, the Carey Center Volunteer Internship and Career Fair, Meet Me at the Vic, and the Carey Center Nonprofit Summit. In addition to these events, now more than ever, we are focusing on professional development and learning opportunities to include our summer fundraising series, which is about to wrap up, and the Nonprofit Affiliate Book Club. The Carey Center Nonprofit Affiliates are the first to learn of upcoming programming, and membership is free. And we are delighted to announce upcoming events, including the virtual Carey Center Nonprofit Summit taking place on Tuesday, October 6th, as well as the virtual Carey Center Volunteer Internship and Career Fair on Wednesday, November 4th. Make sure you are on our mailing list to receive information about these upcoming events. I will include information on how to join the Nonprofit Affiliate Program in the email to follow this program, and would be delighted to have the pleasure of working with you, especially as we navigate this challenging time. Now, let's get to the reason you are all here. If you attended last year's Nonprofit Summit, you remember our next speaker, Brooke Battle. Brooke Battle is the founder and CEO of Swell Fundraising, an event and online fundraising platform that supports virtual events, online campaigns, and in-person event fundraising. Launched in 2012, the company won Alabama's statewide startup competition and has supported almost 2,000 events and campaigns across the country. Recently, the Swell has assisted clients with successful transitions to virtual fundraising events, utilizing an innovative virtual event model. Brooke has served the Birmingham nonprofit community for over 20 years with board leadership for the Women's Fund of Greater Birmingham, Alabama School of Fine Arts Foundation, Oasis Counseling Center, Girl Spring, Birmingham Southern College, NCCJ, and Railroad Park. I've really enjoyed getting to know Brooke over the past few months as we have planned this program, and I'm grateful for her taking the time to join us today. Please help me welcome back Brooke Battle.
Thanks, Brittany. That's yay! Like, y'all are so sweet. That's really nice. That is the most uncomfortable thing to sit there and listen to that. I do love nonprofits. I hope that that is what you heard. I love nonprofits, and I care about. I sometimes call it a nonprofit habit. Like, people have a shoe habit. I had a nonprofit habit, and it really led to Swell. So just know that I love everything all of you do, and I'm a sucker for a great cause. So Brittany, I might need a little help as we maneuver. I really do want to try to both get through some material and yet make it interactive, which is always a little hard to balance. I love that this is a meeting format, and so that does mean that we can talk to each other. And so I'm just gonna try to think about the best way. What I might do is, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, because I actually have 2 slides in here about this, but it's really built for like a webinar format, which is different than this format. And I'm so glad this is a meeting format because it's a smaller group. And so what I may do is, as I go through slides, I'll go through a couple that are sort of by topic, and then just open it up and say, ask me something. And I just can't say enough about how much more fun it is for me. So, and I know you're all nonprofit people, we all want to do, right? So I know hopefully that'll be a nice invitation to ask. Please, I love to hear questions. Secondly, if you're feeling like you don't even know what to ask about virtual, you're not alone. And so ask that. Like, I don't know where to start. So there's nothing that you can't ask here, I think, in this environment that the other participants won't nod their head and go, thanks for asking. So let's really try to do that. One of the things I love about the summit in Auburn is just how familial the environment feels to me as an Alabamian. And so I do, now that Swell has had the opportunity to do a lot of this in cities across the country, I really want to bring it home to you. So just please consider me a friend of what you do, and a neighbor here in Alabama, and happy to do that. At the moment, I've just shared my screen, and you should see a slide that says Virtual Fundraising Event Success. If anybody is not seeing that, let me know. And I think we have a few on a phone call, it looked like, so I know you can't see it, so I'll try to be like a radio host. Probably not that good. We're going to go through a few things. I'm going to talk about really what is virtual, because it's a word being talked about a lot. It's being used very broadly. So I need to define that for us. I'm going to talk about the steps to success related to your donors, but also related to technology, because I think that's one of the bigger hurdles for some of you instinctively what donor centricity is, right? It's the technology that you're like, how do I make that feel, that way? And so, it's going to talk about the technology and the steps to that. And then we'll get into just some what I would call more checklists. There's some slides actually that I won't speak to directly, but you're going to receive the slides after this, and they almost function more like checklists, things I feel like you could go back to. It's actually harder information to deliver audibly and a little better to consume just if you're reading it. So I really wanted to convey that information to you, and so we won't maybe talk about it, but we're happy to answer questions as we get into that. So these are the slides that I'm going to skip, because you're not on a webinar, and I can see your faces, and it's so great that you're here. One of the things about Swell, and I've had the great opportunity to speak to your conference in the past, you know us. One of the things I did not mention, though, probably in those previous times, is that when Swell started back in 2012, the big idea behind Swell, and really the reason we won that startup competition, is because the idea behind Swell initially was that events have an online presence, and it was this bigger idea of how to help events reach an online audience. And that's why if you know our software at all, maybe you don't, but we really merge online tools with event tools. And the whole idea behind Swell was that idea of Swell, like make it grow and make it bigger by reaching an online audience. What it meant is that in 2012, we live streamed the first event out, and we've always had that live stream virtual component in our software. And I don't mind telling you guys that when you go through a startup competition, that everybody is like, be disruptive. And it was a disruptive idea, this idea that anybody could participate in any event from anywhere. But here's the truth on it, is that nonprofits really weren't ready for all that technology. They really needed us for things like text to donate, and how to run a great event, and how to maybe have an online presence. And so we really stopped talking about that live stream virtual add-on that we've always had. What it meant, though, is that at the end of March, is that we were able as a team and in our programming to update a lot of that old code, and we were very quickly able to move clients into a virtual module, because we had a lot of things built into the system that made it easy to do that and experience doing it. So live streaming in 2012 was really hard. Facebook did live stream, YouTube did live stream. I had to live stream the first event myself personally, figure out how to do it, because the AV companies couldn't even do it. I've lost the share. Hold on, guys. Let's see. Let's go back to. Are you guys with me again? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not sure why Google decided to log me out of all my things. And so I tell you that just to give you some background as to why we think we're why we think we're equipped to be talking to you about this right now. It's just something I sort of stopped talking about it and really felt like we were more valuable to clients, you know, in these other roles that we've played over the last few years. But we're back to virtual events. But 100% virtual is very different from this partial virtual that we had. Before, we viewed virtual events, you know, the virtual add-on, it was really about just extra people online. So if you had 400 people at an event, if 50 people watched online, our clients viewed that as successful. That's not success to you now. Success now is having 400 people log in at the same time, and that looks really different. We have reviewed over the last, since about April 15th, we have reviewed over 100 virtual events, some on the Swell platform, many that weren't on our platform, and to get a sense of, because our clients were asking us, what do I do? And we didn't really know, like from the donor standpoint, we had instincts, but we really wanted data to rely on. And so we've worked really hard to at least gather what we can on these 100% virtual events. I'm going to convey a lot of that to you, but I know this is how you feel. Is there anybody on the phone that doesn't feel like this slide talking about virtual events? Come on, speak up. Yeah, I felt like when I get on the phone with a nonprofit these days, at the end of the call, like it happened yesterday to a wonderful group in Daphne, and it's like, oh, I feel so much better now. There's just a relief that comes from knowing that somebody at least knows what to do. So I'm going to define virtual events. And then at the end of this, I want to ask if any of you are thinking about one of these different silos of virtual events. That'll help me know what to talk about a little bit. The word virtual has, because software companies like mine, we do a lot of marketing to you guys, and the word virtual was everywhere. I mean, I'm sure you were inundated, and I'm sorry on behalf of all software companies. We can be, I don't think we are, but I know I've watched the marketing and everything was virtual all of a sudden. But I'm going to define that for you. The first iteration that we saw in April, May was this idea of a virtual event when it really was just an online fundraiser. Many peer-to-peer software platforms just started calling what they were doing virtual fundraising. And let me be clear, I love peer-to-peer fundraisers. I love a great online campaign, and their clients and nonprofits that have called us about virtual, where we realize they really don't need to do virtual. And we actually say, why don't you just do a great campaign and forget the live streaming and all that, you know? But I call that online fundraising. And it's good peer-to-peer, it's a strong campaign. Sometimes nonprofits have been ending that online with if it's a walk, they'll culminate it with a Facebook thank you live, but that's not really a fundraiser. That's just a thank you video or something. So I'm really not geared to talk about that as much today, but I'm happy to help someone if you're thinking about a good online fundraiser. They are very effective. I love them. And we do a lot in that category. And even with, we have an online class in online fundraising, an ebook, all sorts of stuff. Again, I want to make sure you know I'm a big fan of that. And I don't think virtual events are for everyone. So that's one type of thing that's being called virtual. The second that's being called a virtual event is this combination of technology that I think groups sort of scrambled to put together in the spring. And that looks like the following. It's where a nonprofit is maybe live streaming or doing a pre-recorded stream on Facebook or YouTube often. And sometimes that live stream is being embedded on your nonprofit's organizational page. And you're saying, go here to see our virtual event. But really what you're asking them to do then is, in order to give or submit or participate in an auction, they're having to actually click and leave the live stream in order to go and actually give you money or participate in any way. And so you're really using we actually heard of one client, it was actually a heart association that had used 4 different software platforms trying to, to cobble together a virtual event. So it's like live stream, and then you can have them give over here, but they're not really together. But, and in that sense, you're sometimes you lose the ability to gain registrations. It's not really an integrated module. And then your donors have to exit the event to give and bid. So, but it's a good way to deliver content. And they're really just watching a show, you know, in that environment. And I'm going to show you a little more information about that. And then the third is an integrated experience. That is where the program is streamed in one space, where the guest only has to be on one page. The giving and guest engagement is all integrated, and there's truly a virtual experience going on where guests can see each other, I say see in quotes. And that's what I'm going to talk a lot about today, because that does feel more donor-centered than the one in the center. The one in the center, this is a great nonprofit in Atlanta. I clipped this. I've watched so many events, so many. And I like this example because they did raise money and they were successful. I mean, they raised a good amount of money. And I want you to know that, even though they had technical issues. And I think that's really important for you to see, like, their donors are fine. Their donor community is fine. They tried and they did a nice job and they were still successful, but and yet it didn't work well for them. So, and you need to know that people are okay. Your donors are not Fabergé eggs. And so, I like this as an example of a really strong, big nonprofit, and they did not handle the technology well. But it's, and this is what happened, is that they did a YouTube live, maybe even Facebook live stream, really well produced, probably had a third-party AV company do it. And so this on the left-hand side of your screen is a screen grab of their web page. So they had everybody come here for at-home dining for a difference, like at, you know, I'm trying to think what time that was. Like, so they got everybody to come here at that certain time. This was a page on their website, right? So imagine adding a page on your nonprofit website. They embedded the YouTube stream on that page, which all of you can do on your nonprofit website. And then they brought everybody back here to watch the live stream. And then in order to go give and donate, you either had to text to give or click on one of those buttons down below. The reason I screen grabbed this is because it crashed their site, because most nonprofit sites aren't built to have 500 people or even 100 people click on it at one time. So you sent all those people back into your site, said, come here at noon on Friday. And people did, to their credit, and then it crashes your site. So you'll see they say, we broke the internet and still raised 400 of our 550 goal. And I think most people in May would have still considered that a good job, you know? So it's something to think about. I point that out because it's easy to crash your own site without thinking about it. The hard part here is that there isn't, so you're watching it, you can give, but from a donor connectivity standpoint, I do think it misses out on something, right? It's easy to click out and leave, right? You're kind of invisible here as a guest. This is our module. There are a couple others. Mobile Cause has an event module that has some integrated messaging, and they're the only other one I know of that has a good integrated model. I'm sure there are others though. You know, I'm not here to market Swell. I'm here to help you. So there are other integrated models out there, I think. But this is more of an integrated experience where the website itself, like your event website that you send everyone to, is built for, you know, it's built for traffic, for one. That's kind of like the plumbing and the electricity behind the house, like the hot water heater when everybody's showering at the same time. It's kind of thing you don't appreciate until it doesn't work. And this is one where the live stream is coming through, the donation button is there. You never have to leave in order to give, but your guests it's announcing donations. You want some type of tool where the guests are not invisible. And that's really what I'm headed into now for the rest of this conversation. Now that you've got a sense of the visual of it, is that a donor-centered virtual event goes back to the heart of why we go to an event. And that is because we need to be seen there. Our friend expects us to be there. We want to see someone there. We are not going to be invisible. You know, you are going to be seen. And so a donor-centered event is focused on ways to make those donors and guests who come into your event feel seen. And that's what we're going to talk about. And one of those, if you've got technology in place, it can automatically create visibility in there, you know. And so that's one important thing is that there's a way for them to see each other, a way for them to register, and a way for them to actually enter your events and be seen. And with that comes the concept, because a lot of clients are having a hard time envisioning. You just, you know, you can't see your event this way. You're like, why would anybody come to a virtual event? And that's a really good question, actually. Why would they come? And there's some events that don't translate well online. And sometimes this is a great opportunity to change that. One of the things that got the next slide there. I didn't think that was the next slide. Sorry, guys, you can tell I was surprised. So one of the things I have a couple of examples of some events here to help you see how people are doing this online. When you're trying to envision your event, one of the things I would tell you to do is when you're talking about your event, like when I hear someone describe their event, or if I'm on the call with a nonprofit and they say, I just can't see it online, I say, tell me about your event. And in fact, I wish we might do that as an exercise. If somebody, think of if you're up for telling us about your physical event. Because there's a point in the conversation about your physical event where you become more emotive. It's like, and then there's this moment where right? And it has nothing to do with the food. It has nothing to do with the tablescape. It has nothing to do, and there's this moment, this is usually of great humanity, that you love about your event. And that's where I try to get folks to isolate the element of their event that probably does translate online. So, and that's what we work hard to do. This is Person Passion that was in Birmingham. A lot of you probably know about, maybe you know about this event. It's very large, 1,200 people. It had to pivot very quickly into virtual. A lot of people watch this event, I think, because they probably thought there's no way that Person Passion can go virtual. It really, I felt like, was that kind of event where people were like, this is not going to work. It's a 21-year-old event, and it didn't have a lot of time to go virtual, but it did. And what they did is focused in on what this event is great at is table captains. They are great at encouraging their table captains. They are great at recruiting table captains, motivating, and they did not change that. And so they really amped up their table captain communication, converted them into virtual table captains. I think really empowered them to own the success of this and be like, we are going virtual, and by golly, this is going to work, right? They really empowered that. But the table captain structure is always what has worked about this event. The program for this event has been the same. It is like you could set your watch by the program, by Person Passion. There's so many things we've come to count on, I think, about the program. And literally, it was just streamed online. The videos that would have been shown on the screen were shown during the live stream. Those that would have spoken from the head table spoke on a camera, socially distanced, and the whole program was presented in a virtual format. Normally, it's 1,200 people seated. They ended up with 1,548 tuned in concurrently during the live stream from 159 cities. And I think what people loved about it is that it really felt like that event. The things that we had come to count on, the video that makes you cry, the chair of the events that the community of table captains really think so highly of, all of those elements were still in place. And then they could see each other logging in and donating. And so it worked. But again, I go back to the core thing that works about that event is this strong table captain structure. And they really leaned into that. Here's another one that's completely different. It was brand new, and it's Camp McDowell. And they did a Camp Champs campaign very much at the last minute when they realized camp wasn't going to be able to open and they were going to have an operating shortfall, like every camp in the country right now. And they did a music festival. It was from 2 to 8 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. It really reminded me of the old city stages. See, Brittany already said that I've been in it 20 years, and there's things where I just felt so old. Who knows? Who remembers city stages in Birmingham? Who's with me? Yeah. Thank you, Tammy, for nodding your head. Yeah. So, but you know how a music festival is marketed, where it's like you know which band you're going to go to based on what time. Obviously, I'm not doing a lot of band parties anymore, but But it reminded me of that marketing, and I could tell that those that were invited to sing and do some storytelling were very special to those. Like if you've gone to this camp, you knew these names. And so, and they did this online broadcast, and I thought it really celebrated the heart of that camp, things that those donors and those guests would enjoy, and it goes back to that. It really went to the heart of what I think tells a story about that culture. They could have done an online 1 hour, let me tell you about the camp and how many people we serve and all, and that would have been okay. But instead, I think they did something where their guests really could enjoy it and maybe reminisce. And I saw some wonderful things. So they actually had 800 attendees at their event that afternoon from 38 states. And you could see people logging in and like another person saying, oh, like I'll use Brittany here, just like, oh, Brittany, where are you now? And I heard somebody say, well, I'm in Washington State. Like you can see people connecting in that chat as they were coming in and enjoying music that they had enjoyed. And that to me is the epitome of like a donor-centered event. It celebrates what people love about that camp. And then of course to give on top of that, it's not so hard it's not so hard to get there mentally. Some other concepts that are working well online, virtual walks are working very well online. I can give you some, it's really fun with virtual walks to crowdsource the walk. So have people submit videos of their walk and then you can put them together and you can celebrate their walk through the live stream. And again, it's really about making the donor and the guest the center of your content and what you're doing. We've got a national walk coming up in September, and they are crowdsourcing. They're doing a whole day of yoga, the walk, they're streaming together. It's a health cause. So and it's really about doing things that are really about, the program really is directed towards families that I think that I don't want to suffer, that struggle with this particular disease. And so it's again extremely donor centered, almost more so than their walks were. They've been doing these walks for years. This almost seems more donor centered than the walk because of the way the content has become so disciplined. Tastings were working in the spring. I will say our clients headed into the fall. If they have any kind of food chef centric, those are hard because the chefs, I'm just going to go ahead and those would work well with it. Those were still working in the spring. The restaurant community is such dire straits that it's very hard. So that it's a good donor centered event because you can deliver something to the donor that they may love, particularly if you're a food oriented nonprofit. But just walk tenderly if you're trying to get a chef on the phone to do that. So that's a struggle. That's also a struggle with auctions. We can speak to auctions in a minute. And then an authority figure. One of the things that we've seen also work is that, most of our clients are, I'm not sure we have any clients. I don't think we have any clients that are paying for big speakers to fly into their nonprofit events. But your donors could appreciate listening to somebody who's a leader in your cause. And we've had clients this spring that invited, they were pre-recorded messages, but almost a keynote or a pre-recorded message from someone that's really a sort of a celebrity figure in their space. Brittany mentioned my involvement in the Women's Fund in Birmingham. The Women's Fund of Hawaii is also a client of ours, and they have an event that's 15 years old, tabled event. They had a hard time grasping how in the world it was going to go virtual. And then finally, when they backed up from it, they were like, let's do this differently. And they got kind of excited and thought they were going to try to get Barack Obama because he's from Hawaii. They were like, we're going to get Obama. They did not get Obama, but they did get the CEO of the Ms. Foundation, Julie Foudy from the U.S. Women's Soccer Team. Their senator is a female. I can't remember her name now. They had a scientist. And they had these leading women do these wonderful messages to their group. But I would tell you that the best part of what they did was they have almost maybe all of their grant recipients do a quick recorded thank you and why the Women's Fund matters to them. And it was just super fast, but it gave you this really interesting perspective over the magnitude of what they do. And you could tell from the chat going on that their donors, people who loved that, they got a real sense of the impact of the organization, which as a grantee foundation organization is sometimes hard to do, connect those dots. And I think that might have just happened by happenstance. But when normally at a physical event, they would have had one grantee partner stand up and do the spiel. You can't have 12 stand up at a physical event, but you can stream 12, 30-second videos together. And it was really powerful. So that's the kind of thing you can do that, again, it goes back to, what can I do for my donors now? So if you've got donors that are, you've got this core, which goes back to what is the core of your event, this core thing they love, and you want to hit that. But then what can you surround that with that you maybe wasn't available to you with the physical constraints? What can you deliver to them in an environment that they'll really feel like, wow, this was a gift to me in this time. And the third is getting them to attend. So that if you hit those things, then attendance comes around. I'm going to speak to that here. That's the second bullet point of this, and it's why guests attend virtual events. One of the things about virtual that is hard is attendance. Brittany probably could tell us how many people signed up for this and how many people are online. Virtual events fall into the category of webinars. Unfortunately, it's really easy to feel like you can skip it. And whereas you don't, if you know you're headed to a table with a glass, you don't leave a plate empty, but you'll leave a computer empty. So attendance is something to really think about throughout this. Guests attend, in our opinion, based on the data for those 100 events, for 3 different reasons. The first and the easiest for you to do is what we're calling accountability. And accountability is that we think that ties back to the registration process. And it's actually one reason we think that table captain, team captain, we're actually encouraging nonprofits, even if you didn't do that before, to figure out a way to do that now. If maybe it's a watch party, but something where there's a person who's doing a little bit of the inviting into the event. That creates accountability, as opposed to even just the second level of accountability is if I have pre-registered, that's some accountability. And then the third is just that, and there's no accountability in the following, which is just tune in at 7 o'clock. Like, there's no accountability in whether you show up or not. And so that's one reason it is really important to continue with your event registration. I would just put, if you're making notes, like registration process, like you have, in order to have people show up for your event, you've got to have that pre-registration process. And I will tell you that based on our experience, it is stronger when that invitation is coming from a friend. So if you can layer into that, that's even better. So it creates accountability. I show up because Brittany invited me. I secondly show up because I have a ticket. So the second reason is if you can announce something and provide something that they may need, whether it's something in your community, something they can't get somewhere else. If you have, not everyone has this, but if there's something you can announce that they need, that's a good way to get people online. The example I use is actually my daughter was in a debate tournament, and every night they live stream the awards presentation, and literally every night for a week. And but prior to announcing the results from the day, which is what we wanted, they fundraised. They honored a coach, they fundraised, they talked about the umbrella organization that runs all of that, an organization that I sort of knew about, but kind of didn't. And one night I was sitting there on the couch with tears coming down my eyes because of a video of a posthumous award to a beloved coach, and talking about, anyway, they got me. And the only reason I was there, though, is because we wanted the results that they were going to scroll at the very end. So it made me think of that. I was like, I'm only sitting here because I really want what's at the end. And yet now I'm hooked. And I thought that was an interesting, just sort of firsthand experience. And scarcity. If you've got something, a speaker, something that they can't experience somewhere else, then that's a rare moment and they need to tune in. I'm going to pause here on event concept. Any questions? Anybody thinking about a concept that you want to bring up? Have you seen a virtual event that, let's see if I can pull up. Don't be shy.
If you are one of those, I always say this every time, if you are one of those that feels a little uncomfortable speaking up, just drop it in the chat and I'll speak up for you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. I don't believe any of these folks are on the call, but there is an organization that probably most organizations had a gala planned for April, and it was moved to October, and then they just dropped it. It kind of seems like the person passion. But what would you suggest for people who have galas and that kind of event going on? I'm assuming you'll say table captains and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. But above that, and maybe this is just my worldview. So let me just go ahead and say, like, I'm up for somebody emailing me later and say you are wrong, because I'm very collaborative anyway, but also we're always learning. Let me say this about canceling or just sort of throwing in the flag. Kind of like, I think it's incumbent upon us in the nonprofit sector to keep going. Your cause needs you to keep going. And when a nonprofit sort of throws in the towel a little bit on fundraising, whether it's the gala and just like, I can't do it. I don't have, we just can't. That would be like me going to my board and say, we can't sell any more software. We're just gonna do it. We're just gonna hold tight here, right? And my board would say, you're fine. Right. So I can't help but say, like, I feel like when I was looking on LinkedIn one day, there was one nonprofit that was like, here we are, we've switched around, join us for virtual. And the very next post was another nonprofit that was like, this would have been the day, we would have had our event. It was a little woe's me, and please donate to us here. It was just the status. It was like, and I thought, if you're a donor and both of those are in your LinkedIn feed, which one are you more impressed by? And so that's why I'd say to challenge yourself to do something, because I think it's an example of your grit, your commitment to your cause. And I just think it's really important to show that you as an organization, even if it's just barely there. So that overall, so when it comes to the tactics, I do think you've got to think about these elements of like what people love about your event, what you can salvage from it that people love, and how that translates online. So, and then if you've got table captains, you're lucky, because it really works. Sorry guys. But anyway, anybody else? Let's see chat. Let's see what we got going
Kim
on.
asks, this is a great question. How do you overcome the technology barrier with older donors?
Mm-hmm. Sure, that's a great question. You make it really easy. And that's where I'm really I think that's why people thought person passion wouldn't work. It definitely skews. I don't think they would mind me saying it definitely skews older. And they logged in. I ran into I know she's an 80-plus-year-old donor to that organization. I ran into her in this market, and she said, "You won't believe it, my whole table logged in." Now they of course still mailed their checks in. They did not make an online donation, but they had all logged in. And it was easy. And that goes to some elements of your technology. So if it's really easy to click the link, communication is a huge part of that. And then if you've got some strategic older donors, you may really want to get on the phone and walk it through, like, hey, this is where you're going to click. So you can't do that at scale, but there may be a few that you can do that with the day before. But they can, your donors, older, they are grandmothers and grandfathers too, and they are on Zoom calls with their families right now. So I can tell you they can do it. So that's how. They may not donate online, but they will tune in. So great question.
You make a great point with a lot of older donors, and that demographic in general is being forced online right now to communicate with their families. And I didn't think about that, so that's great.
But it has to be one click. Like I mentioned, that organization had 4 different software platforms at work, and the person who called us, who was not older, she had gotten lost. Like she had missed the fund a need because she had gone out to donate and she couldn't find her way back. And that is what happens if you have people, if it's like, we're on Facebook Live, but you can go here, you really need to walk your donor experience through and be like, how hard is this? And a lot of times you don't actually go register yourself. Like, I don't know how many clients we have where they don't ever go through our system. So it has to be really easy, just one click. So Yeah, it's
Perfect.
important. Let's
Um,
see.
Sarah was talking, she was just,
Uh-huh.
everyone can read it in the chat. She was talking about how the Boy Scouts are planning what they're doing
Hmm.
this year. And then a question about
I want to make a comment about the text to give. Sorry,
yeah.
Brittany, just that you're talking about using text to give. One thing to think about, Sarah, that goes back to your donor experience. So if you're watching on a computer, then text to give is okay. I can pull my phone out and give here. But and that goes back to older donors too. I've got to be able to remember the number, remember the keyword, open up my messenger app. Like I've got to do at least remember 3 things to go do text to donate. And I want to give myself, we sell text to donate. So I'm obviously like, I'm a fan of that technology and I love to sell it to nonprofits, but it is a little clunkier than you might imagine in this environment. And so we actually, if we have clients who call us and try to license that, we say, you're welcome to license it, but it's actually not, it's clunkier than you would think. The other thing is that over half, almost 60% of the traffic into our virtual events are on a mobile device. Many people are watching these on a tablet or on their phones, and which is not unlike the trend we were already seeing with ticketing. Just a lot is on a tablet or a phone. And if you're on a tablet or a phone, then you have to actually exit out of the live stream and open your messaging app to do the text to donate process. So see, that's a great, thank you. I really appreciate it. Sarah, you have helped me so much. So that's a great example of how until you walk the process, like you would have done that. You would have walked that process and gone, ooh, that might not be what I really want to do there. So, and so that's why it's so important to walk through your donor process, test the full experience, and then you'll see these little hurdles that are really hard to see until you do them. The reason I know that is because I was on one. I was like, oh, this doesn't work. And I would have totally thought that worked in April 1st. I really would have. So YWCA talked about text to donate all through that. 1,500 people were online and text to donate was popping up on the screen. Not a single text to donate out of 1,500 people online. And they had thousands of, they had over 1,300 transactions coming through, but none of them were on text to donate. So that's just as a test. Where it does work though, Sarah, is if you do watch parties. So that's an example where they're watching it on the screen and they're not watching something on their mobile device. So if you're doing watch parties, text to donate works really well. So how about that? Let's see, they have a change to an annual fashion show fundraiser to virtual. Oh yeah. So the question is, my organization has never hosted a virtual event, but this year we may have to change to our annual fashion show fundraiser to virtual. Are there any suggestions on getting help setting it up for October? Definitely. In fact, we've got a couple fashion shows that are happening in August. Just send me your email address. I'll send you the links back to those events, and you can watch one. There's no better way to see how they do it than to watch one. So that entire thing is pre-recorded. They're pre-recording the entire show with some live introductions throughout. So thank you guys for asking. Really, I can't tell you how much I appreciate getting to just go off the script a little. But now, I don't know if you can raise your hand or just go, that's me in the chat. For many organizations, this is your opportunity. So, when I speak when I got to speak at your conference last year, which I love, I do that 5 elements of a successful event, which is really one of my favorite topics. And I asked in the very beginning, like, how many people love their event? How many people hate their event? And like half the room, y'all are all like, ooh, I kind of don't like my event. This is your opportunity. If you want to change your event, this is the silver lining for coronavirus, because I will say, this separates the good from the bad, the strong events. This is a great chance to do something different and to pivot into something new. So how many people would love to change their event? Do you feel like you can say in here? A virtual documentary. I need to refer you to maybe Sidewalk Film Fest for that, which about how they might be doing. I talked to a group in Vermont recently who's also a film festival, and there are some platforms that help deliver those independent films, and I just can't recall the names of the software right now off the top of my head, but I can get you in touch with some people who do know those different platforms that do that. Um, so thank you. Okay, so
Brooke,
nobody
I
wants
have a
to change their
question.
event? Okay.
I have a question.
Hi. Hi.
Hey, I'm with the Library Foundation in Columbus, Georgia, and we have an event that is beloved in town. It does very well, and this will be our 6th year. But it does have a large fee associated with it and a lot of costs. So we are choosing to postpone it until 2021, but still have a new event that is more literary focused because we are a library. The other event is called Wine, Women, and Shoes. It's nothing to do with the library
I know
whatsoever.
No, I know that concept very well.
Yeah,
Even the founder, I know the founder of that. Yeah.
And it's a great event, but it just wasn't going to fly in Columbus virtually. So we are postponing it, and that's part of our big announcement is to say, we want to do Wine, Women, and Shoes right because you love it and we love it, and we cannot shop together and watch a fashion show virtually. So we are going to postpone until 2021 when we can be together, and this year you can support the library through what that is yet, we don't know. And I'm feeling the time crunch of changing a new event and making the announcement and getting people excited. I'm just feeling that time crunch. So that's my concern.
I know that Wine, Women, and Shoes concept, and that's a good call because of the fees associated. That's a great decision on Wine, Women, and Shoes, just because of the fees associated with the planning entity that does that. But I love that you're kind of getting back to your core and like what you're about. I would assume there's a group that I'm not going to name them just for their own privacy, but there's a group that I was speaking with who has a really entertainment. It's a very large, people go to this because of the band that's playing at the venue. It's heavy and on the like yours is kind of heavy on the entertainment scale. And sometimes that's hard to translate. If you're going to hear a band, it's, that's hard to, and there's a fee associated with the band, a sort of similar thing. And when I was talking with her, and so I would just wonder if this lands, when we just got talking, I said to her, I know people in your community love this event, and it'd been around for a long time. I said, how did it start? And so she started reminiscing on how they started that event and why they started that event and some of the stories of how they started it. And then I said, are those still some of your core supporters? She's like, oh yeah, they're my kind of ride or die donors, And I was like, why don't you do a whole event, which is a behind the scenes on how they came up with the idea. And I'm sure there's some stories of some huge mistakes that they made in the beginning when they were kind of doing more of a DIY when it was small. And she talked about how it had grown over the years. And so I think they're going to do something that's really dialed into that core crowd and celebrating and letting them kind of reconnect on how they started what is now kind of a marquee event in their community. People have long forgotten that it started with 50 people, and so I'm not sure that applies there, but it just like to think through like that core group that helped you start Wine, Women, and Shoes and what they share in common. If they have families, I could see bedtime storytelling being kind of an interesting thing with families. Readathons are interesting. It'd be interesting to stream like all day long. Like that'd be kind of interesting, like to be like, hey, all day long we're gonna have all these marquee people from the mayor, whoever, all these people read. Maybe it's a section from their favorite book. And you're like, yeah. So, but stream it so that I can tune in and watch. I might live in DC and my best friend lives in Columbus, and she's reading at 2:00. So that's. Yeah, I'm thinking of that Camp Champ type of model. That'd be really fun. So
yeah, we're hopeful it engages a bigger group, a wider audience.
Yeah, that'll be really fun. So it's going to summarize here kind of what's working and what's struggling, give you some tips. So live funded needs are still working very well in a live format. And then traditional luncheon programming is working. The following are struggling down below, particularly silent auctions. So much of what you gather for your auction, restaurants and all, it's just we're seeing lots of weakness in that space. But here's some tips for you. Time of day, we're seeing that midday, evening events are struggling. Evening on a Saturday is really hard. So if you don't be wed to your Friday at 6:30 time slot, think about the time of day, the registration process I mentioned. Unless it's an all day, I love the all day like that. If there's good scheduling and good communication, if it's just more of a standard event, the length being approximately an hour. Some people have thought, oh, we can just do this in 15 minutes or 30. People log in late. And so I've watched several events where at the 30-minute point, there's still lots of logins coming in, and the nonprofit is sort of signing off. So, which is sort of sad. To me. So, but at the 45 minutes to an hour, you don't see those new entries coming in as fast. So, and we do encourage people to do live programming when you can. I know it's nice to do pre-recorded, but back to that donor-centered piece, when you're live, you can see who's online, and I can say, hey, Tammy, hey, Sid, hey, Naomi, you know, you can call them out, and back to that core message about what makes it donor-centered is making them feel seen. You can thank them real time for their gift. And when you know you're seen, and when other donors know you're seen, they want to give and participate. And that live element allows you to do, in the absence of that, you don't feel seen, and you can't talk to them and communicate to them in that same way. There's a good question here. Is the auction struggling because of the items or because people aren't bidding? It depends on the items. The answer is yes to both of those right now. So the answer is yes to both. So happy to talk to you about what we've seen work with auctions. And so we're sort of getting toward, I've got a number of slides left. I kind of let us go off in that and talk, which I'm so glad of. This is a slide from that presentation I did back last fall on the elements of a successful event. And as you know, it's an entire hour, this whole presentation. Because don't forget that every event still is successful because of the same reasons. No one was coming for the food or the drinks. It has to do with all of these elements, and you can still create these in a virtual environment and really try to hit each one of these. The last thing I really want to hit, and then you'll get some, I'm going to highlight the rest of the slides that you have, is that what a number of people are doing is really going into the fall and the winter even with a plan A and a plan B. And we think this makes you look really smart to sponsors when you could say, we're seeing some clients really try to think toward a hybrid event, which helps you do a team captain. If you haven't had a table captain model, you can have host parties, which gives you a captain model. And it's really easy for them to put up on the screen your core content, where you've got watch parties and then you're delivering live content to them, and then they can participate in that way. If you've got that hybrid model working, then it's really easy for somebody to be 100% virtual. So you're able to easily pivot back into plan B. And frankly, plan B is always there. Anybody who just wants to tune in online can. So you could either have your watch party or single. So you've got both in one. I was talking to a group yesterday who are hoping that maybe they can have up to 50 or 100 people together in different venues. And I was like, great, that's awesome, plan for that, but we've got your plan B already built in. So I'm gonna just highlight the slides you have here. I remember I mentioned that I was gonna include a lot of slides which were more data and I wasn't really gonna talk through them. This is an execution checklist, because I feel like those of us who are in events, we're checklist people, and sometimes it makes it hard to envision something new. You get kind of stuck because you need a checklist. The only thing I want to highlight about this is that the one big difference in a virtual is that the first two things usually occur last. Well, maybe not the second one, but usually the program gets developed toward the end of the process, and really you need to start there. So develop your run of show first, or toward the beginning. That's going to then help you define, then the next thing is how your guests are invited, sort of what the structure is. Is it captain, watch parties? How are we inviting guests to register into this process? And once you've got those answers, then the rest of that starts to answer itself. So, but just start with your run of show. This is a little bit about what the day of looks like, your setup and your day of broadcast. These are some pictures from the American Red Cross did a gala online. So you can see, like, that's the broadcast, and that's what it looks like online with the MC. Here's a little bit about sponsorships. And again, these are the elements of a sponsorship package that you can include that are different from your physical. You will have increased reach. You're going to be able to measure things you've never been able to measure. So it can change your sponsorship package in some really meaningful ways. And then these last two are the actual specifics on what you can measure. So this is what technology enables you to do. And so these next two slides are like the different places that logos go on all the different elements: your email, your logo placement, your ticketing, your event website, your live stream. These are all this is all technology at work to bring a virtual event to life. And then the very next slide is all those same things, and then the measurements behind the scenes. So like on your email marketing, you have your open rate and your signups and your logo placement, how many unique visitors came to your website. In your ticket registrations, you'll know how many tickets are emailed and how many are open. With the live stream, and we know how many viewers, we know where they are, we know what city they're in, and so how long they watched. And so this is all information now and data that you have that a sponsor might really value in some way. You are able to then, if there's a sponsor that really maybe has a new product, maybe it's a restaurant that has this robust curbside delivery they need everybody to know about. Well, guess what? You just become a great marketing platform for that. You can get people to sign up for their new feature. You've got things you can do to activate all these users that you're going to bring in. You can activate them on someone else's behalf through all that technology. I mean, you're going to email them so many times. You've got a ticket registration, you're going to do a pre-event communication, you're going to do a during event communication, then you're going to do a post-event communication at a minimum. And that's before you've even added one to the list that I didn't have. So you're probably going to communicate with them 6 times. So throughout this whole process. So just think through that. And then finally, I always end on leadership, and that so much of this is about you. And so really, if you adopt it and get excited about it, everybody else around you will. So, and with that, did I hit it? 10:57. How about that? So
that is awesome. And we have some time to spare. So I say we open it up to questions. How do you feel about that, Brooke? Is that good?
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
If you have any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can drop it in the chat if you prefer. Oh, Kim asked, can we revisit the times that work well and that don't?
Sure. I'll actually slow down on that a little bit. The times that are working well right now, this is summertime, coffee, breakfast, and lunch, and then a late afternoon 4 has worked really well. The 6:30s evening has struggled, weekends have struggled. You probably can guess why. I say during summer, I wonder about when school is back, how that afternoon slot will go. But we really see good logins in the breakfast, lunch range.
I will say for myself, lunch is definitely the best time for me because I'm pausing to eat anyway, and I can just add a little time. And if I don't want to be seen while I'm chowing down, I'll just take off my video. So that's great. What about, I'll add to that. What about, do you have any insight on what fall may look like, or you don't know because we haven't been there yet?
I don't know that I know what fall is going to look like, but it's going to look a lot like the spring. I mean, from an event standpoint, it's going to look a lot like the spring. Lots of virtual dinners, going to lunchtime. If that's what you mean.
Yes, I was, because I know a few people have fall events, and so I was wondering, I know we're tossing around different times. Sarah asked, can we go back to the plan A and plan B side?
Yeah.
That was a really great slide.
Sure, absolutely. Let me go back. How they're different? Sure. One is a watch party, and the other is just 100% virtual. So what happened, here's the difference between the spring and the fall, is that in the spring, many of us were under stay-at-home orders. And so you had to pivot your event into, and when I say 100% virtual, that means that everyone is sitting at home on their own. So you're reaching 1,500 people in 1,500 locations. And so that's 100% virtual. So the plan A is trying to have some community, some gathering going on, even if it's small, and to sort of try to, and because when you do plan A, and plan A requires a little more work actually, you've got to sort of maybe create a watch party captain checklist. You know, maybe it's a little host package. You got to create a process for them to invite guests to their home. And so the communication requires a little extra level of work in helping recruit, you know, watch party hosts and things that you don't do in the 100% virtual. You're still going to live stream something and still send some core content out to all of those locations, but you've done that extra level of work to sort of focus in on. And what I didn't talk about is that like one group we have, which I think is so brilliant actually, is they are hosting small dinner parties, but they're going to have a core program that people will watch, but then they're going to have facilitated conversations around a topic. So it's not just a dinner party. It's like you can sit around the table, and then after it's over, they're going to facilitate a conversation around this issue. And so that really is obviously going to pull in people who really care about that cause and want to talk about it at a level that maybe they can't talk about every day. And I just think the idea of building that kind of community right now, again, you can't do that at a party. You can't do that at tape. That's the kind of you can only do in this environment. So I think they're kind of embracing this and saying, you know, we're just going to go really deep into our cause rather than and dispense with the party completely. So that's what plan A looks like. But if they need to bounce back into virtual, because if we end up on stay at home or something again, it's really easy to backpedal on plan B, because that's what I meant by that. Did that help a little bit?
It helped me for sure. I thought that was great. And we are at 11:01, and we do have another question, but I asked that we respect Brooke's time and everyone else's time. And Brooke, if you want to put up your contact information,
sure,
so that Corinne can follow up with you, and anyone can follow up with you on your on any questions they may have. And I'll go ahead and start winding down our program. Thanks again for joining us today to learn more about virtual events, donor-centered virtual events. I learned so much, and I know you all did too. If you have any additional questions, feel free to email me or Brooke, and her information is up there on the screen. And again, Brooke, thank you so much for all of this. I know that it's helped me and the group that I work with, and it's going to help so many people in the future. I already have a ton of people that couldn't attend and want me to send them the recording. So again, I'm so grateful. And everyone, please join us next Wednesday, August 12th at 10 a.m., same time, same place, as Alicia Davenport, Senior Director of Gift Planning for Auburn University's Office of Development, presents Discussing Planned Giving with Donors. This is something that is very popular and being discussed more and more these days. To register and to get more information on that event, make sure you email me at branyba@auburn.edu. You'll get an email from me. Just respond to that email. And again, thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Brooke, for taking the time to share your knowledge with us. And we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
Go get 'em. Bye.